Tonight is the third week of Lent. We are continuing through this series. During Lent, we create space to encounter God. We do this by giving up or taking up, giving up what can distract us to create space for us to hear from and respond to God, and then taking up practices that ground us and realign us and increase our attention to God's voice. Every year, our prayer is that together as a community, from Ash Wednesday to Easter Sunday, we will be more intentional in creating space and encountering God in our lives. This year, we specifically wanted to engage in Lent through the lens of finding rest for our souls. Jesus famously said in Matthew 11, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." So we're spending Lent talking about things that prevent us from finding that kind of rest, because those are the things that also prevent us from connecting to God. We have previously talked about perfectionism and worry, and this week, as Matt alluded to, we are talking about apathy, which is a fun thing to delve into. What is apathy? One definition of apathy, today's Super Tuesday. Did anyone else not know that? Because I woke up not knowing that. See, what is that? There's an election today. I could not feel more apathetic about the political process and prospects. And it just feels very appropriate that we were talking about apathy on the night of Super Tuesday. But a better, more clinical definition is something that I'm going to read to you, a long definition from an actual psychologist, a guy named Leon Seltzer, who says this. What is apathy? In a sense, it's something like falling in love. You can describe it all you want, but until you've experienced it, you can only guess what the feeling is. Paradoxically, what makes the feeling of apathy unique is that it's essentially the feeling of not feeling. It's something that at some point in your existence you've encountered. Whenever you feel that something vital is missing from your life, yet you lack the drive to pursue it, you're afflicted with this curiously emotionless emotion. Through much psychological research, it's now accepted science that you must experience feelings about something if you're to take personally meaningful action on it. And without any compelling emotion to direct your behavior, and apathy literally means without feeling, you just aren't sufficiently stimulated to do much of anything. Yes, apathy is a feeling, but it's also an attitude. And sadly, that attitude is one of indifference, unconcern, unresponsiveness, detachment, and dispassion. Such an attitude saps you of much of the energy, so much energy that you feel lethargic, listless, and exhausted, almost too paralyzed to act, and certainly without the will to do so. This is why apathetic individuals are easily identified by their passivity. Their interest in confronting life's challenges is seriously compromised. They just don't care enough, and frankly, they don't care that they don't care. I know that was long, but I thought that just so accurately sums up what apathy is that I wanted to share that whole thing from you, again, from an actual psychologist. Dorothy Sayers describes this in a similar way. In describing sloth, which is essentially apathy, she describes it as that which believes in nothing, cares for nothing, seeks to know nothing, interferes with nothing, enjoys nothing, loves nothing, hates nothing, finds purpose in nothing, lives for nothing, only remains alive because there is nothing it would die for. Yeah, rough. It's that to me, it's that voice that whispers to you, what's the point? None of this matters. And sometimes at the worst points, your life is meaningless. It is experiencing death while still living. Apathy is something that I have struggled with in bouts, probably my entire adult existence. I don't really remember it showing up in my childhood. But to me, it feels like being stuck in concrete. It's like being so sad that you just don't feel anything anymore. It's like that definition that I read. It saps my energy. It saps my motivation. I have trouble completing the simplest things. And I am repeatedly confronted with the false narrative that nothing I do works. Part of my personality is I see everything that I do wrong, and I pay very little attention to the things that go right, which is a form of delusion. So much so that when this narrative is going on in my head, it just feels like there's no point to even trying anything anymore because I just know it's not going to work. I languish there, and then I beat myself up for feeling this way. Maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you can relate to seasons of apathy, or at least are familiar with what it feels like. Maybe that's where you're at tonight. There are several things that can cause this, but kind of the top 4 that I wanted to talk about. The first one I hadn't really considered, and that's just overstimulation with trivial things. So this is just inundating ourselves with, social media is an obvious thing here, or following along and just being like so up to date with like what celebrities are doing or what musicians are doing, or just like filling your lives with these things that don't actually matter in the long run, don't actually matter to your everyday life. And filling it to the point where you can no longer differentiate what matters and what doesn't in your life. Similarly related is information overload. This is like too much news. I can fall into this category, which sometimes I have to just stop watching the news, which is why I didn't know today was Super Tuesday. Just being stuck in the doom news cycle that is created and manufactured to put you in a fight or flight, or most likely paralyzed state of being in fear. Another common cause of apathy is burnout. When you're burning the candle at both ends in any aspect of your life, but certainly at work or with your family, when there's no margin in your life and you're just on all the time, constantly going. And then the final thing is grief. When you're dealing with life not going the way that you expected, when you're dealing with sadness and sorrow of loss, sometimes you feel that pain so deeply that you eventually begin to just drift into not feeling anything. Apathy is what happens when everything in our life feels insurmountable or overwhelming or outside of our control. The thing that I'm learning about apathy is that it's an understandable defense mechanism to protect ourselves from reality. But so often when I realize that that's where I am, I freak out. I wonder what's wrong with me. I'm scared to some degree, I need to fix this. And I'm starting to learn to see that it is far more something to respond to than something to fix. If you're apathetic, if you're in a season of apathy, you're not actually broken. It means that in some ways you're working, your brain is working. Apathy it's emotional and psychological and spiritual callousness. So just like we develop physical calluses that show up when there's constant friction on our skin, if you're constantly doing manual labor, or if you're lifting weights, or your shoes don't fit the right way, we develop these patches of dead, nerveless skin that are meant to protect us from pain. Apathy does that for you on an emotional and psychological and spiritual level. Apathy protects us from pain. But it's no way to live. Jesus says in John 10 that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Apathy can be a thief. Apathy can be a thing that though it is protecting us from something, it ends up protecting us from living our lives. Apathy is the opposite of what I imagine living life to the full looks like. And it certainly flies in the face of the idea that we're basing this whole entire series on when Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Not overwhelming, not painful, easy and light and restful. When we're drowning in apathy, when we're not sure anything matters, when we're shut down, apathy is literally just shutting yourself down. When we become calloused, in order to protect ourselves, we need hope. And one of my favorite passages of scripture that I honestly have not come back to in a number of years that I thought of today, I think speaks, at least to me, into my apathy. And this is from Lamentations 3. It says, "I'll never forget the trouble, the utter lostness, the taste of ashes, the poison I've swallowed. I remember it all. Oh, how well I remember the feeling of hitting the bottom. But there's one thing I remember, and remembering, I keep a grip on hope. God's loyal love couldn't have run out. His merciful love couldn't have dried up. They're created new every morning. How great your faithfulness. I'm sticking with God. I say it over and over. He's all I've got left. God proves to be good to the man who passionately waits, to the woman who diligently seeks. It's a good thing to quietly hope for help from God. It's a good thing when you're young to stick it out through the hard times. When life is heavy and hard to take, go off by yourself. Enter the silence. Bow in prayer. Don't ask questions. Wait for hope to appear. Don't run from trouble. Take it full face. The worst is never the worst. Why? Because the master won't ever walk out and fail to return. If he works severely, he also works tenderly. His stockpiles of loyal love are immense. He takes no pleasure in making life hard and throwing roadblocks in the way. I think for me, the mixture of the acknowledgement of how dark and heavy and hard life can be, which is much of Lamentations, mixed with the hope in this passage and the dependence on God, is what my apathetic heart needs to hear a lot of times. So if, like me, you find yourself in a season of apathy, and if it's not something to fix, how do we respond to it? For me, one of the most profound realizations has been that apathy is a choice. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like something that was completely outside of our control and something that's happening to us. And apathy the state of being that you're in that has put you in an apathetic place might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to respond to. It is a choice. You can continue living with the calluses on your hands, or you can make changes to mitigate the constant friction that's causing those calluses in the first place. We can live with apathy and choose death while still living, or we can choose to respond to it. I think the most counterintuitive thing when you're feeling apathetic, apathy saps our energy and our will to do anything. And to respond to it effectively, we have to push through that and do something anyway. Like we read in Lamentations, to face it head on. We have to choose to act even when we have to choose purpose and meaning even when we've lost sight of what our purpose and our meaning is. So, a few ways to respond to apathy, to practice pushing through apathy. The first is to just shut off the overstimulation. Stop doom scrolling. Stop filling your life with things that don't matter, that take up so much of your brain space. Shut off the doom news cycle. Or at least, I'm not saying don't be completely uninformed. Don't show up somewhere and not know that there's an election today. But give yourself some space from this thing that's literally manufactured to produce fear in your life. The second thing, this is probably going to be something that shows up every single week. It's practice Sabbath. And this is literally just the same thing that I showed last week. A simple way to implement this is just choose a day, get off social media for that day completely. On that same day, choose 3 to 4 hours to be completely screen-free. TV, devices, computer, everything. And in that time when you're screen-free, schedule something fun that you like to do. It really doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. I actually would say don't make it more complicated than that so that you'll actually do it. Cut off the overstimulation, stimulation, not a word. It might be actually, it sounds great. Anyway, practice Sabbath. Third, show up for yourself by addressing your physical needs. This is another thing that just kind of falls to the wayside when we're caught in apathy. But just get back to the basics. Make sure you're sleeping enough. Make sure you're getting sunlight. It's important. I forgot to put this on here. Make sure you're drinking enough water. You're basically a plant. I've seen that over the internet several times. Like, you need sunlight and water. You're a plant. It's true, though. Even if you burn easily like me, you have to get sunlight in your eyes. And if you try to just do this every single morning, these are small iterative things that help you push past and just get a little bit more of that motivation and will to push past these things that feel insurmountable. The other thing is move, get some exercise. It doesn't really matter what it is. Go for a walk. It doesn't have to be like crazy strenuous, but when you're in a state of no inertia, you need to just literally get your body moving. And then finally, nutrition. Pay attention to what you're eating. I'm terrible at this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to pay attention to what I'm eating. I just want to eat what's there. Food overwhelms me. I just don't like paying attention to it. If honestly, if I could just eat for enjoyment every once in a while, I totally would. If I could just take a pill to stay nourished, I would do that. Maybe someday. Anyway, sorry. Pay attention to what you're putting into your body because it affects how you feel and how you think, and it affects your energy levels. Give yourself good things. Sleep, sun, water, exercise, and nutrition. Fourth thing, right? Yes. Fourth thing. This has been huge for me. I'm still learning this. I'm just figuring this out like this week. Acknowledge your grief. I have learned that I fall into apathy as a way to protect myself from feeling grief that I am carrying. And so one of the best things that you can do to push through apathy is identify what you're grieving and don't ignore it. Feel it. Don't evaluate it. Feel it. I will skip over feeling things and instantly go to evaluation, which lets me come up with reasons for why I shouldn't feel my grief. It's not that big of a deal. I'm just being immature. Life's not fair. Which again is just protecting myself from feeling what I'm carrying. Spend some time with it so that you can actually feel and acknowledge what you're going through. So right now, in counseling, I'm going through the process of like literally just vocalizing and expressing all this grief that I've been carrying for probably the last 14 years, but at least the last year. And just feeling it, not evaluating it, not doing anything more than saying, I am really disappointed that things have turned out this way. Or I am really sad that this has happened in my life. Even with just like really simple things that sometimes it's just really hard for me to acknowledge. Like, see? I can't even say it. Maybe I'm getting better at this because I feel like if I say it, I'm not gonna be able to finish the talk. It's just gonna go. Simple things like I'm pissed and I'm super sad. Oh, God. at choices that that my friends have made completely outside of my control. Or things like I'm pissed that my dog died in August. Like that I'm still like very angry about that. But for most of the time since then, I've just chosen to feel nothing to protect myself from experiencing what feels like overwhelming grief. And what's funny is, just yesterday, actually, my counselor asked me, like, can you just name some of the things that you're sad about? And as I did it and cried about it, it was like, this is not nearly as overwhelming as I'm telling myself it is. And it feels really good to get it out. I don't recommend doing it in a room full of people on stage with a microphone in your hand, but learn from my mistakes. What I'm learning is so much of apathy is just pushing through to face the pain head on, which again is the exact opposite thing that you want to do in that moment. Acknowledge your grief and your pain. You are strong enough to do that. And you have the support of the entire community. And a lot of times to do that, we need someone to talk to. And if you don't have anyone to talk to, or you just would rather not talk to anyone that you currently have to talk to, I would love to talk to you about what's going on in your life. I would love to talk to you about the grief that you're carrying that maybe you're having trouble expressing. This sounds kind of weird, and I hope you understand the way that I am intending this, but that doing things like that is one of my favorite parts of this job. Like being able to walk alongside of people and carry things with them is like why I signed up for this thing. So you're not burdening me, even though like I'm having trouble doing this on my own. It actually would probably help me to walk with you through it. And I still love doing that even when I can't do that for myself. It turns out none of us can do it for ourselves. All of us need someone to do this with us. So I would love to be that person for you. Come talk to me afterwards, shoot me an email. My email is phil@tnl.org. Super easy to remember. It's like 10 letters. All right, that was number 4. The 5th thing, get outside of yourself and practice ways of generously caring for those around you. Make a difference in someone's life, even if it's small. Excuse me. Just get outside. Get outside and do something for someone else. Get out of the constant thing that's going on in here, or just the cemented feeling of laying in your bed and not being able to do anything. Push through it and go do something for someone. If nothing else, you start to see that the things that you do can have an effect, and the things that you do can matter, even if it's just making someone smile for 30 seconds that day. That matters. And that's a small win that starts to add up to help you push out of this pit. So to recap, apathy is an understandable defense mechanism to protect ourselves from reality, to protect ourselves when life gets too overwhelming. It's one of the ways that our minds tries to tell us that something's wrong. And so it's not something to try to fix, but it's something to respond to. And to respond to it effectively, we have to do the most counterintuitive thing when suffering from something that saps our will to do anything. We have to choose to act. May we be people and a community defined by our willingness to act, even in the face of what feels like overwhelming apathy. May we be people who live life to the full. Would you pray with me? God, I pray for anyone in this room tonight or anyone hearing my voice that is struggling with apathy. God, I pray that you would give us the courage to move, to give us the courage to not give up and to not stop living, but to push through what feels so insurmountable and overwhelming. To trust that you are there with us, even when it feels like you're gone. God, thank you for this place full of people that cares for one another, who are willing to carry burdens alongside of each other. God, I pray that we would continue to be people that look out for one another. And God, I pray that we would be known as people who live life to the full. We love you, God. Amen.